Hello and welcome to Verbal to Visual. In today's video, I would like to share with you a process that I've been using lately for sketchnoting an entire book. The process that I'm about to describe is one that I used to help me create the visual summary of the book Essentialism that I shared in last week's video. So if you haven't yet seen that one, go check it out to see what the final result of this process could look like. The process that I follow has 4 steps to it. The first step probably isn't that surprising. It's when I read the book. While I'm reading, I also underline passages that stand out to me and take some notes in the margins. The goal there is to be an active reader as opposed to a passive one. That's why I enjoy using a pencil to make marks directly in the book. But I also seek a balance so that I can stay in the flow of the reading process. I'm not spending too much time going off on my own, but instead stay immersed in the reading experience. And while I'm reading, there are really just 2 things that I'm doing. I'm using the underlining to capture key ideas, the most important ideas from the book, those that might be new to me or feel significant. And I'm also looking to make connections to other books that I've read, other authors, other ideas, and also connections to my own personal experiences, often related to some significant event or insight from my past, or something related to a current project that I'm working on that's top of mind. It's via the margin notes that I capture those connections, and that's a way for me to personalize the reading experience, to integrate the things that I'm learning about into my own current understanding of the world. And I encourage you to do something similar as you're first reading through a book, finding a way to capture the ideas that stand out to you and make connections to things in your past or your present and maybe your future. And speaking of the future, I think it's worth identifying why it is that you're reading this book in the first place. By identifying that personal why, that will help you decide which ideas are actually worth capturing. And it might also help you to make the types of connections that will serve you in the future, that will help you apply the ideas that you're reading about in a meaningful way. So here's what those in the book notes actually look like for me. It's mostly underlining, occasionally some icons like a star or a book or a magnifying glass, and some short bits of text to remind myself of things that I want to follow up on or connections that I have made. So that's what step 1 looks like, the reading of the entire book while capturing some notes via underlined passages and the space in the margins. From there, once I've finished the entire book, I move to the second step in this process. And it's in this second step that I start sketchnoting with single-page chapter summaries. I grab some cheap copy paper as I flip back through the book one chapter at a time and pull out the ideas that I underlined and maybe expand upon the notes that I took in the margins. And it's in this step that I actually take the time to visualize the ideas with 3 primary categories. Sometimes it's just a simple icon that I might use alongside some helpful text. In other cases, I might use a scene, often involving a human doing something, interacting with some other objects or on some sort of journey. And I'm also on the lookout for when diagrams might be helpful, when the ideas that I'm capturing might be best expressed in a flowchart or a mind map. So it's with those 3 categories of visualizations, as well as helpful text surrounding those visualizations, that I capture the ideas within each chapter, limiting myself to 1 single page. That single page constraint helps me avoid the tendency to capture too much. I don't want to rewrite the entire chapter. I simply want to pull out the most engaging ideas. And for me, it's important to remind myself when creating these single-page chapter summaries that I intentionally want them to be rough as opposed to polished notes. They're just for you. They're not for anybody else to look at or benefit from. That takes away the pressure of wanting your notes to look artistic and helps you to shift your focus from looks to impact. Here are a few examples of single-page chapter summaries from the book Essentialism. Often I do end up more or less filling the page, but I'm not afraid to leave a bunch of blank space if in any given chapter there might only be a couple ideas that stood out to me, ideas that I do want to remember and revisit. So throughout this entire process, it's important to always be personalizing your note-taking process and what you choose to capture in a way that emphasizes what you want to get out of the experience. By completing those sketchnote summaries of each chapter, what you end up with then is a quick reference, a way for you to dive back into the material from any given chapter and quickly see those ideas that stood out to you, those ideas that you might want to do something with. And that's what we start to transition to as we look at the next step in this process. In this third step, we put the pen down and grab a few highlighters for the purpose of identifying actionable ideas. Looking through those single-page chapter summaries and identifying what you want to do with the things you find there. For me, the most appealing thing about sketchnoting is how it can close the gap between ideas and action. And that's what we're getting at in this step. And because there might be different types of follow-up that you might like to take with the ideas from a book, it can be helpful to create a key. Think back to your original why for reading this book in the first place, and maybe narrow it down to some specific types of follow-up action that you might want to take, and give those specific follow-ups a particular highlighting color. So for me, that often looks like using one color to maybe identify good single idea sketch notes. So that's for the ideas that have really stood out to me where I enjoy the particular scene or diagram that I created for it, and that I want to maybe kind of highlight as a standalone idea. Something that I might polish up a little bit and share on Instagram, for example. I might use a second color to highlight any to-do items. Oftentimes, connected to key ideas are some specific follow-up action that I want to take on a current project of mine. And unless I find a way to highlight those specific follow-up actions, I might forget to take them. I might not incorporate the ideas that I've just read about as directly as possible, as directly as I intended to. And I might use a third color to highlight ideas that are related to a current project of mine. So I give that highlighter a project-specific filter. So those aren't necessarily specific to-dos related to that project, but more ideas that I want to keep in mind while I continue to develop that project and make progress on it. All three of those examples then, and this entire process, is really about asking and answering the question, what next? Now that you've captured the most important ideas to you in those single-page chapter summaries, what do you want to do with those ideas? And here are a few examples. In this case, I used orange for that good single idea sketchnote category. And these visuals probably look familiar if you watched that summary of Essentialism or if you follow me on Instagram. I used green for those to-do items, specific things that I wanted to take action on right away. And I used yellow in the project-specific way. In this case, I was looking for ideas that I might want to create an entire new video around. Potential follow-ups to the kind of whole book summary that I've already shared that's more of a deep dive into a single idea and how you might be able to apply that idea within the realm of visual note-taking. So those were the specific categories of follow-up that I chose for that book, but yours could be completely different. You get to customize your key depending on what you want to do next with the ideas from the book that you just read. And then by flipping through those pages and seeing those colorful highlighted sections stand out, that will make it easier to actually take the action, to do the thing that you want to do with those ideas. And from there, you might take it one step further. This fourth step in the process here is one that I consider to be optional, and that's a single-page summary of the entire book. This is more or less what my summary of the book Essentialism looked like. A few core ideas in the center, and then some highlights from the three primary sections of the rest of the book. And if you choose to create a single page summary like this, I think there are two important questions to ask yourself. The first is, what's the overall structure? In the case of essentialism, that was pretty easy to identify because the way in which the book was laid out. After the first section of essence, the three that followed, explore, eliminate, and execute, made it pretty easy for me to divide my page of this single page summary into the three sections that you see. So in many cases, something along the lines of a mind map or a flowchart will work well, but you could also be on the lookout for a single scene that might be the anchor for your book summary. Maybe if there's a single strong visual element, an object or a particular situation that appears throughout the book, use that object or that situation essentially as a large container within which you can include the most important details. And that leads us to the second question to ask yourself: what details are essential? You only have a single page here, even if it is a large page. So you've got to continue refining down and asking yourself, what are the most important ideas here that I want to remember? And throughout each step of the process that I've described, we've been focusing on fewer and fewer ideas. You first go from the entire book to just those things that you've underlined and noted in the margin. From there, you'll probably only pick some of those things that you underlined to include in your single page chapter summary. And on each of those pages, you're probably only gonna highlight a couple of things. And it's one final stage of filtering if you choose to create this single page book summary. And that can be a difficult process, deciding which things to exclude at each stage there. But it's that work and those decisions that will help you to do something meaningful with what you read. Because for me at least, the whole purpose behind putting in this effort when reading a book is so that 1 month later or 6 months later, rather than not really being able to recall many of the details from the book that you read, instead you have these artifacts of your learning, artifacts that led to specific actions. And for me at least, it's worth it to spend this much time with the ideas from a single book, especially considering the broader context of how many ideas we're exposed to on a given day and how quickly those ideas come and go. Some ideas are worth more attention. And this process here is an example of how you might give them that. How you might give the ideas in the books that you read that matter to you the attention that they do deserve. And by giving them that attention, you're much better able to incorporate those ideas into your life in a way that creates positive change. So consider using this process when you start reading your next book, and let me know how it goes. As always, feel free to tweak any of the details to better suit your circumstances and your needs as you work toward a book sketchnoting process that you're happy with. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you're able to put into practice at least a few of the ideas here. If you'd like to explore others related to visual note-taking, the individual skills you might develop and how you might apply those skills, then check out the resources available at verbaltovisual.com. I hope you enjoy whatever book you dive into next, and that you enjoy actively engaging with the ideas that you find in it. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you next time. Till then.